Aspirationally, I really do envision a world where we could get 1 billion people to be involved. Imagine how many billions of trees we could plant, how much deforestation we could stop, because people would be like, hey, we shouldn't be actually cutting down all these trees in Indonesia to grow palm oil, for example. We can do that in a more sustainable way.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Next Big Thing HQ, where I interview founders and showcase startups raising capital via Reg CF. On this episode, I interviewed Michael Libenson. Michael's the founder of Carbon Counts. Carbon Counts is a play-to-plant mobile adventure game. That means the more you play, the more you plant real trees in the real world. How cool is that? Now, this episode was truly fascinating and inspiring, not only from the business model's perspective, but also from the mission and Michael's vision. Please enjoy this episode. So, Michael, thank you for joining us on Next Big Thing HQ. You're a 3-time entrepreneur, a 2-time co-founder, and have had 2 successful exits. Starting a company is really hard, but having a company be successful or having a successful exit is even harder. So what made you want to start Carbon Counts?
Well, I love being an entrepreneur and building teams and working with a bunch of smart and passionate folks to try to do good in the world, whether that's delivering great products to people or actually trying to drive important change in the world. The first startup that I was involved with is a company called You Promise that helped people save for college. The whole idea of college is super expensive and it's far away in the future. So can you get people to take little steps today that will add up and over time actually translate into, a college savings account for their kids, or, in the case of people saving for college. So starting Carbon Counts was sort of in a similar vein, where the whole idea was, climate change is this giant problem. Nobody feels like they can actually do anything about it. How can you help people feel like they can be part of the solution, that they can take little steps that when you combine them with the activities of lots and lots of other people can really make a difference in the world? So that was kind of what inspired me. And I think it gets my entire team excited to come in to work every day and work really hard to make a difference.
Well, and that gets me excited just hearing about it. And the mission for Carbon Counts is Carbon Counts will motivate tens of millions of people to take individual and collective action to positively impact climate change. So can you talk about how Carbon Counts is making this possible, how you are accomplishing your mission?
Yeah, so we're trying to inspire people to take action first by getting them to play a game that is fun first, that they really enjoy playing. They're not playing it just to do good in the world. They're playing it because it's fun and great, but it also is doing good in the world. It's also planting trees. And so between the game itself, EverForest, and the impact platform that we're building, we believe we can plant over 1 billion trees over the next decade, which is going to reforest deforested areas and help with ecosystems and, plants and animals that live in those areas, employ people who are going to be doing the tree planting in Africa and other places, and ultimately make the people that are playing the game more aware, more educated, and more involved. And that will then have a secondary effect in the rest of their lives, where in a way that Pokemon Go, for example, combines play on your phone with real world activity, getting people to walk 14 billion miles over the first couple of years of its existence, which, by the way, is 14 billion miles of the distance from here to Pluto and back twice. So Pokemon Go has been very effective at getting people to move. We think we can also get people to take real world actions that are also good for the world, like, for example, eating leftovers and not wasting food, and getting progress in the game for doing that. Or maybe having a meatless Monday and eating a more plant-rich diet on Monday and getting progress in the game. Or even just noticing, 5 houses in your neighborhood that have solar panels and getting progress in the game. And so these kinds of things we think can raise people's awareness, and that ultimately can make them better voters and better consumers, and actually help bring the 70% of GDP that is consumer to help all the technological investment that's being made in climate change.
Can you walk us through the gameplay and then the process of planting trees?
Yeah, sure. So the game is based on a core set of mechanics that people are very familiar with that are called merge mechanics. So if anyone's ever played Candy Crush, for example, or for that matter, a merge game, Candy Crush is a match 3 game. Our game is a merge game. EverForest is a merge game, which is effectively a match 2 game. So you're combining 2 similar things to create a third thing, and then 2 similar third things to make another thing. And so by doing this merging, you're actually solving puzzles, and you're solving puzzles for the animals in the game. So the whole idea is that you're helping Mother Nature build and restore this magical EverForest in the game. As you build and restore the magical EverForest, we then plant a real forest in the real world. So you get to meet all these cool animals that are, Disney style quality in terms of their Our team literally came from Disney, and a bunch of the team was ex-Club Penguin. For any of you who have played Club Penguin, which was the largest children's game in the world, started in British Columbia and acquired by Disney. Again, a lot of our team came from Disney. Our executive producer came from Plants vs. Zombies. So really experienced game team that's really passionate about bringing fun first gaming to actually make a difference. And then we plant trees with partners. Right now, we do that primarily in Africa. We've already planted over 1 million trees already. And, as I said, we plan to plant over 1 billion trees over the next decade.
What's the kind of equation for doing X amount of maybe minutes on the game equals 1 tree? Kind of what's the equation for knowing what a user has to do in order to get trees planted so that they can track how much they've helped the environment, how much they've helped with climate change?
Exactly. So the way that the game works is it's a free-to-play game. Again, think like Candy Crush or Royal Match or other games that make, that are free games but make over $1 billion a year in revenue, or at least something close to that. And most of the revenue is made by either what are called in-app purchases. People spend money in the game in order to make progress in the game, or they can watch ads, and ads are not required to be watched, but they can, again, watch them they're called rewardable ads. You get progress in the game for watching them. Generally, games like these will make, let's say, 2/3 of the revenue from in-app purchases and about 1/3 from the ad watch. So when it comes to playing the game, we need to fund the trees through the revenue that we generate by playing the game. So as you might imagine, people who pay money in the game or who watch ads will plant trees faster than people who don't. But you can play the game and never watch a single ad or ever spend any money, and you'll still plant, let's say, a couple trees a year. If you do watch ads, you might plant, let's say, a tree a month or maybe even a tree every couple of weeks. And that's just the trees that are funded in the game. And then if you spend money, you can basically plant trees much more frequently. We intend to have the idea of companies being able to be involved as well, so that companies can fund additional tree planting. And when that happens, those are like bonus trees that you could earn more frequently. So depending on how successful we are at getting companies involved in funding additional trees, you might get bonus trees even more frequently. So our goal is to have trees occur on a relatively regular basis, but trees aren't free. We have to actually fund that activity through the profitability and the revenue of the game.
So the business model is getting users to play for free, and then there's going to be additional in-app purchases that they have the option to buy, as well as potential, you said, reward videos where they can watch a video that's an advertisement of some sort and in return then get some rewards. So it seems like it's a pretty good business model. I might be a little naive, but to me, I don't know if I've heard many businesses use this model. Was there a proof of concept that you used in the past or that you've seen in the past to kind of validate, this business model with games going forward?
So there's one concept that sort of inspired us originally, which is that Alibaba, the giant company in China that has Alipay and a variety of other things, they created a thing called EverForest. And EverForest is a vehicle where people can sign up for it individually. They play with their family and friends in a social way. They do everyday low carbon activities like walking or taking public transportation or paying with Alipay, and they grow a virtual tree. They earn points that grows a virtual tree. And if you're successful at growing the virtual tree, they plant a real tree. Now, there are 900 million people in China that have smartphones, and EverForest has been able to get 600 million people in China to be able to do this tree planting game experience called EverForest. So that's incredible. Insane. It's 2/3 of all the people in the country that have smartphones. So we said, okay, that's an interesting proof of concept. You cannot pre-install an app on people's phones and get 2/3 of the people to use it. That was one big thing, but that's really almost like a loyalty program for Alipay. It's not a revenue generating thing, and it's not really kind of a great fun first game, which is what our team has built. EverForest is live right now in 5 countries, not yet in the US, but coming soon. But the idea is that, again, you can play this game, the game will generate revenue, and we'll use a portion of the revenue to fund tree planting. And so that, we just sort of bake that into the economics of the game, and we believe that it can work.
And now you said EverForest is live in 5 countries. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the customer feedback has been, what the customer receptiveness has been? I guess when you're also planning on releasing the game for the US too.
So game development is a very kind of sophisticated practice. And I say that not to be self-congratulatory. It's a big business. Gaming overall is a $200 billion business. There are 3 billion people that play mobile games specifically. So it's competitive. And so when games get created, they get put out in the marketplace, oftentimes in a small market to test just at first to make sure that it's stable, that the game works. The game has to be played on multiple Android devices and different software, and you've got to make sure the game is actually working. So you first start out really small, then you expand the number of places that you go to, and you're really at that point then testing whether the game is attractive to people. Do people like to play it? Do they retain? If you acquire 100 people, how many people come back the next day, which is called day one retention? How many people come back the next day to play the game? So in our case, when we just launched the game earlier in 2023, our day one retention was down in the teens. It was still very low, but that was okay. That was normal because it was just sort of the first iteration of the game. And then we worked to improve the game over the course of last year. And we've now got our day one retention up to the low 40s, which is very exciting because our forecast profit and loss statement, our P&L, is based on a 40% day one retention. So we're very encouraged that people really like the game. We get tons of positive feedback about people liking the game. People play for, in some cases, a large number of hours over a long time. The game is designed for you to play in little snippets, just to be clear. So it's not like meant to be played for 50 hours in a row, but I mean, sometimes people choose to do that. And the concept tested well up front. We asked 2,000 people on a scale of 0 to 100, how do you like the idea of a game that could plant trees in the real world, where you grow a forest that plants a real forest? And we asked them on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being it's a terrible idea and 100 the greatest idea they ever heard. Average score was 80 out of 100 when we surveyed 2,000 people, and the most common answer was 100. So people really like this idea conceptually. And now that we put the game really in the market, we're seeing that people like it in the real world.
I find it very interesting because I believe it's easier to see the impact you're having when you kind of earn it when you do good instead of not doing bad. So I guess the concept is, when I play this game and I know I am then planting X amount of trees, I can measure that impact very clearly, right?
Yep.
I'm planting those trees. And I see, when it comes to recycling is getting bigger and bigger, but it's kind of tough to really understand the impact you're having. Recycling, a box full of cardboard or a couple glass bottles, because it's a lot harder to measure it. So that's why I find it so exciting with this game and gamifying the positive impact of the world is you can track how many trees you're planting. And I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of platform or portfolio that shows you planted X amount of trees this year, on pace to plant, X amount of trees next year. Is there kind of a dashboard where the users can see the impact that they've had?
Yeah, so exactly. You'll be able to see within the game exactly the trees you planted. You'll be able to see where they were planted over time. As the trees get planted, you'll see the species, you'll see exactly the location, all that stuff. But you'll also see the collective impact. So you might have planted 15 trees, but collectively, you'll see that this year, people have planted 12 million trees, for example. And so that awesome. Actually, is interesting. And I think over time, we'll make it so that, different countries or different areas can see how they have done in terms of planting trees. And we're expecting to have the game be social as well, so that you'll be able to play with your family and friends, and you'll be able to see how maybe groups do. And so we envision creating little competitions so that people can compete against each other to plant more trees. So yeah, we think there's a real opportunity to have that feeling of impact be tangible for people and see exactly what's happening in the world.
And you did a study on this, right? Of games without this impact, without the tree planting process, and then with the tree planting process in order to get metrics and measurements of basically the results or how long the users were playing these games. So can you talk a little bit about, what you got from doing that trial?
I think I mentioned the notion that there's an impact platform that we've designed to enable not just EverForest to plant trees, but enable other game studios or other companies to plant trees. So the impact platform we decided to test with a small game called Bubblesome. And what we did is we said, okay, if you play to a certain level in the game, then we're going to plant a tree for you. So we did an A/B test. So one group got that, if you play to this level, we'll plant a tree. And another was just play the game, and it's just the game as it was. And there was I think it was a 40% increase. It was a very substantial increase in the number of people that got to that advanced level when we told them that if they can get to that level, and they would plant a tree. So that was just an example of how we believe that engagement with a game can be impacted by the inclusion of the idea that their play translates into good, into their play can actually result in purpose. And this notion of marrying play with purpose, we think is very special and unique, and no one else is really doing this properly. Game studios in general are not focused on trying to do good, even though all the people are, good, kind people there. They're building great games. And companies that are trying to impact climate, they don't know anything about games. They don't know how to build a successful game. They don't have teams like ours that have built games that have reached 500 million people. So you have to put those two complicated things together. We've done that uniquely And we think that's an opportunity not only to build a very big business, have a very significant impact, but also be very differentiated. Nobody else is doing this right now in a big way.
You've talked about the team a lot, and there's a quote I love where it's ideas are a dime a dozen, but the team that implements them are priceless. So can you talk about the team at Carbon Counts and what makes the team so special?
Yeah, we're really lucky. We've been able to hire incredible people from day one and keep them and have them be super excited about making a difference. People who are in the game industry who build games for a living, they love building games. They love playing games. It's super motivating to them. The people that we've hired are also really motivated to try to do good in the world and to try to impact climate, which I think you may know, last year, 2023 was the hottest year on record. So every day is essentially an advertisement for the fact that we need to do something about this. So the team, we've been able to hire the best people, really great people, and hire them exactly when we needed to hire them and then keep them. So again, people from Electronic Arts who worked on FIFA, worked on Plants vs. Zombies. Our game designer built Adventure Capitalist, for anyone who knows that. A bunch of folks from the Club Penguin game, people that have worked on Star Wars, on Harry Potter. So a bunch of really great games and a deeply experienced team. And so in order to build a successful game, you really need to have that deep talent, and you need it in various domains. You can't just be good in a couple areas and crummy in other areas. The game will fail. It's easy to fail and hard to succeed, but if you have the right team, you have a legitimate chance to make a product that people really care about.
When you talked about it's easy to fail, it's hard to succeed. So what have been the toughest challenges that you've had to face with Carbon Counts so far?
Startups are interesting. I've been doing it for nearly 25 years now. As you mentioned, this is the third one for me and the second that I've co-founded. It's a roller coaster. It's a fun one. It's a life that I love, and it's super exciting to feel like everyone on the team, the work that they do is making a difference. They're not some giant, there's not some giant machine and they're a small cog in a giant machine. Their work makes a difference, and their collaboration, their teamwork makes a difference. So, building a culture is exciting. All that is also hard. It's hard to hire all the right people and do it at the right time. It's not super simple to have people, give you $8.5 million as they have. Great companies and investors have invested $8.5 million with us. I'm grateful for that kind of support from folks, but it's not simple to go and raise money. And then, at the end of the day, building a product that people want, what's called product market fit, that is the giant challenge. People can create a game, but, building a game that people love is not simple. And it's not good enough just to build a game that makes a difference. You got to build a game that's truly fun first. And we think we've got that. So we're excited.
And you're raising on WeFunder right now. So can you tell us a little bit more about how that raise is going, and then how the funds will be allocated for the people that invest on your Reg CF?
Yeah, it's coming along. As I said, the majority of the money we've raised has been from big venture capitalists and angel investors and things like that. So that's been the vast majority of the money. But we're trying to democratize climate action. We're trying to get everybody involved and to have fun in the process of doing so. So we thought the idea of using WeFunder would be a great idea to let everybody be able to participate, ultimately, hopefully be advocates for the game, and to be able to share in the benefits that big VCs to have. The terms that people are investing on WeFunder are the exact same terms that we've raised over $6.5 million on, again, from big companies. So you get the same deal, but actually the good news is that you're actually investing very, very late in this seed process, where we now have much more data about how the game is performing. Almost all of the money that has been invested thus far was done without the benefit of how the game is performed in the marketplace.
Really?
It was based on essentially the quality of the team and the concept itself. So this is actually has a lower risk profile than for the vast majority of people that have invested already.
So can you talk about what your forecasts are for Carbon Counts going forward in the future? Yeah,
so our games, when they're successful, can be very profitable. Candy Crush, for example, makes over $1 billion a year and has had over 5 billion downloads. It's a big game. It's not, it's not, this is a free-to-play game. Royal Match right now is making, I think, $150 million a month. So, this is a big industry. And again, this is talking about free-to-play games. So we believe that in year 3, we can have a $100 million revenue business, and that's on a little over, 35 million downloads of the game. Again, that's 35 million downloads versus Candy Crush that has 5 billion downloads. So, can a game that plants trees and that makes a difference in the world that is really fun potentially reach a lot of people? Is it possible that we could reach 1 billion people with this game and not 35 million? I think it's possible, but of course, we're not going to generate a revenue forecast that says we're going to reach $1 billion in revenue, for example. Is it possible? It's possible. And we're working towards that. But the forecast is 100 million in 3 years.
Yeah, that's insane. I never realized the market was that big. I didn't realize that Candy Crush was making $1 billion a year. What's the market, the addressable market, I guess, for free-to-play games?
There are 3 billion people that are playing mobile games right now. The overall gaming industry is about 200 billion. I'm not talking about like casinos. I'm talking about, games that you play either on your phone or on a console. That's 200 billion. The majority of that, by the way, is mobile. And so it's a big, big market. We think there's an opportunity to include people that don't necessarily see themselves as classic gamers today. People who might just play the Wordle or might do crossword puzzles or, they might play Candy Crush, but they don't think of themselves necessarily as a gamer. And I mentioned before, EverForest's got 600 million people in China to do this.
That's insane.
That's in one country. So we think there's a real opportunity to, with run first play and real purpose can reach lots and lots of folks.
What's a go-to-market strategy in order to hit those numbers or to be on track with the forecast?
Yeah, so go-to-market for games often involves at its core paid acquisition as kind of like the starting point. So the biggest way that games acquire other players is by advertising in other games, because those are people that like to play games. So that's a big deal. I mentioned that's part of how we make money, which is advertising in our own game. And so we would advertise in other people's games. That's a classic acquisition mechanism. But we think we have a real opportunity to get people involved in ways that are different. We think that this game can be social and people can talk about it with other people. Hey, I'm playing a game that's planting a real forest and it's really fun. I'm learning about cool animals and they're funny and they're fun. We think that there's an opportunity for influencers to get involved and celebrities to get involved and for channels like TikTok to actually be really powerful. It's relatively unlikely that Taylor Swift is going to talk about Candy Crush in a public way. But you might conceivably talk about a game that actually is planting trees and doing good. And forget Taylor Swift. You can imagine there are influencers of all different sizes and shapes who might be happy to talk about how they're making a difference in the world. So we think that there's an opportunity to have a real global movement here. And so the go-to-market, we believe, has the potential for real virality in the way that, for example, Pokemon Go became a viral sensation.
I think doing good is always a good thing. People always love to talk about how they're doing good. And so I could see influencers coming over left and right, just wanting to be an influencer or be an advocate for your product, just because they want to be able to say, look, I'm doing good. Look at how many trees I planted, and kind of get their name out there. And everyone wants to help the planet and everyone wants to, do good for society. So I can see, how someone like myself, someone younger to someone like my grandma could all want to play this game just because of this aspect of gamifying social change in a very positive way.
Exactly. We do think that this is the kind of concept that can be appealing for people of all ages and people in all countries. So yeah, it's meant to have very broad appeal, and we're excited about that.
So you talked about kind of the next 3 years forecast. 10 years from now, what's the vision for Carbon Counts? And then maybe do you want to elaborate a little bit more on the Impact platform and then where you see that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, aspirationally, I really do envision a world where we could get 1 billion people to be involved in this. I think that would be super, super exciting if we could do that. Imagine how many billions of trees we could plant, how much deforestation we could stop, because people would be like, hey, we shouldn't be actually cutting down all these trees in Indonesia to grow palm oil, for example. We can do that in a more sustainable way, or all the deforestation that's taking place, particularly in the Amazon, to create grazing land for cattle. I mean, there's an opportunity for us to do that in a more sustainable way, for example. So I think that we can have a really big impact in a broad sense. You can imagine that with the kinds of fun, cute animal characters we have in the game, that those characters could actually go into other formats. You could imagine them being on Netflix or on Amazon, or, for example, in the movies. Super Mario just had a movie that made $1 billion. So there are other extensions that you could imagine happening, and there are other games that we want to build. So we think there are a lot of ways that this game can have impact and ways for this business to actually be a big business. It's a for-profit company, but it's also a public benefit corporation. And we were just recently certified as a B Corp, which we're really proud of. So a company that can be profitable and be a big, valuable business, but also actually have a significant impact in the world.
I can see partnerships, companies wanting to partner with you in order to get their characters as a feature on the game. I could see that being an aspect kind of going forward. Like I think of Disney. I think Disney's kind of primed. Like it sounds like the perfect opportunity to have them have their characters kind of in the game or, in a little aspect of the game. And then they can say, look at us, look, we're helping plant X amount of trees. Why don't we get more Disney lovers to play this game so that we can plant more trees and do good in the world?
Yeah. I mean, so whether it's, having other games be able to plant trees via the Impact platform, as you mentioned, or other companies, whether that's Disney or Visa or MasterCard or Starbucks or Amazon or whatever it may be, you could easily imagine Amazon saying, not easily, but aspirationally. But what happened is Amazon would say, if you consolidate your shipping, if you ship on Amazon Day, for example, you're going to get credit in the game with EverForest. And we're going to plant trees more quickly. And we're going to plant trees, for example, in the Amazon. So Amazon is reforesting the Amazon. You can just think of lots of different potential for us to involve other companies in what it is that we're doing, which we think is good for them and good for everybody.
Is there a specific type of tree that's going to be planted?
So that's a good question. What I would say is that the right tree depends completely on the geography. So we work with really good tree planting partners. There are two of them that we work with, especially right now in Africa. And I went with my chief impact officer, Nicole Rustad. We went together to Kenya last year. We were in Kenya, Rwanda, meeting with our two partners. In the case of Earthlungs Reforestation, which is planting mangroves for us on the coast of Kenya, we've already planted 1 million there. They have different species of mangroves, but they're all very specific to that region. Those are native species to that region, and they're not meant to be a monoculture, not just one kind. You plant different kinds based on the area. If you're planting terrestrial trees, let's say in the Kakamanga rainforest in Kenya, then you're going to plant a variety of different species. And again, it's not just kind of rows of similar trees. You're really reforesting the area and making it into the kind of restored ecosystem that it was originally designed to be, with all the animals and plants living there in kind of in a happy way. So that's that. And then there also is a partner called 1 Acre Fund that we're working with that does agroforestry trees. So they give trees to farmers. We fund them. We give, let's say, they give 20 trees or 25 trees to an individual farmer. The farmer plants the trees on their land. It helps with soil erosion. It helps with water retention on their land. Some of the trees might be mango trees or nut trees, so they can get an income from them. And they have an incentive, or therefore, to keep those trees alive on their land. So those are just a couple examples of how we can plant trees with the right species in the right place and with different partners in different ways.
Now, what are the areas you're focusing on first? Because I'm sure you can't just plant trees everywhere. You want to focus on specific areas to make the impact as big as possible. So what are the specific areas that you're focusing on, I guess, let's say for the first 10 million trees?
Yeah, so Kenya is a big area of focus. Kenya and Rwanda are big areas of focus for us because we've got partners there. The president of Kenya is committed to planting 15 billion trees over the next decade.
Wow.
And the chief conservator of forests, who's responsible for all the national forests of Kenya, is someone that I met with the chief conservator of forests when I was in Africa last year, with our partners very closely related to him. And there's a partnership that we work with the Kenya Forest Service where we're planting trees on national land of Kenya. What they do is they allocate plots of land to partners like Earthlungs. We fund, the game funds the planting of those trees. And then they not only plant them, but they also protect them over time. And it's done as a whole local community effort. It was really exciting to be meeting with the folks that were working on planting. And they're really excited because it gives them jobs and it really improves the livelihoods of the people in that area. It actually literally affects the climate in those areas. It affects the way the rain falls and the way the water kind of flows around, and it helps fishing, for example. It helps in a whole variety of ways. So it's great to have this be a giant collaborative effort.
And also seeing how all the interests are aligned. I feel like that's pretty rare. These many different parties to have all their interests align on the same mission.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that's the tricky part. Right now we have the classic collective action problem. Everybody sees that climate change is a problem, but everybody feels like they can't do anything about it. And they feel like their action doesn't really make that much of a difference. And if you create a mechanism for lots of people to do a little bit, and for all those little bits to add up, whether those are people playing a game and planting trees, or whether those people planting the trees in Africa, or whether those are companies that are actually funding it additionally, or whether it's influencers that are talking about it, all those pieces come together to actually, we believe, do an enormous amount of good. And that's what we're trying to do. The entire team is super motivated to do it. And, I'm grateful to talk to you about it.
I appreciate you coming on. What's the story behind Carbon Counts? Because you seem very passionate and inspired to do this. I'm sure you've been thinking about this for a while. So is there kind of a story behind starting Carbon Counts, or maybe an aha moment where you're like, this is what I'm going to do?
So, I've been an entrepreneur, as I said, for nearly 25 years and in 3 different companies. So that's been the way I've been spending my time from a work perspective for a long time. I'm a huge outdoors person. I love to hike and climb mountains. I've climbed over 100 mountains, a lot with my son. 8 years ago, he and I went to Glacier National Park, which is one of the most beautiful places in the country if you haven't been there. And we did a 50-mile hike and unbelievably beautiful there. But it's weird to think about the fact that the glaciers are melting. Like Glacier National Park will not have glaciers anymore in the relatively near future. That was like, when you say it was an aha moment for me, that was a bit of an aha moment where I said, okay, the next startup that I do, I want to do something that is climate oriented. And I was fortunate enough to get connected with two other co-founders, one who was a former senior engineer at Google, one of the early engineers at Google, and another one who is a CEO of a nonprofit called Rare that has been working on conservation and climate related issues for 25 years. And so the three of us got together to start Carbon Counts, and now we've got a really great team wrapped around us.
And being an entrepreneur for 23 plus years, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've taken away from your past and you're implementing with Carbon Counts in order to help scale it or grow it faster?
Being an entrepreneur is really fun, but it's also really hard. It has all kinds of ups and downs on a daily basis, and it requires, a lot of perseverance. I'm always super excited when I see, really young people getting involved and taking a chance and trying to do something that's difficult and sort of mentally not taking no for an answer. They're just like going after it. And they may have a hard time. It may not work the first time around, but if you keep trying, you can make a difference. You can build a product that people want. You can build a company that can employ people and be a fun place to work. So for me, yes, it's somewhat challenging, but at the same time, the challenge is part of the fun. I mean, why are we here? I don't have that many startups left in me. Maybe this is the last one. I don't know. But I was really inspired to try to do something that leverages the skills that I've developed over the last nearly 30 years of my work career and really try to do good in the world, try to make a difference. And, we can only do a little bit collectively. And it's interesting that today happens to be Martin Luther King Day. Certainly somebody that I'm hugely inspired by, one person making a huge difference in this world. So, if I can do a millionth of what somebody like that did, that would be incredible.
Well, it's impressive too, because I feel like many entrepreneurs tackle a problem, but the problem may not be that big. You're trying to tackle climate change, which arguably is the biggest problem right now. So it's a massive problem. And the fact that you're taking it on is extremely impressive, but you're doing it in a way that also helps other people tackle it with you by gamifying a game so that they want to plant trees, they can play the game, be inspired, and also see the progress and see the impact that they're having, which I'm thrilled with. We have just a couple minutes left, so I want to ask a couple questions. What advice would you give aspiring entrepreneurs, maybe 20-something, 22, 23 years old? What advice would you give them now?
My advice is if you feel compelled to be an entrepreneur, do it, especially when you're young, because the younger you are, the more willing you are to embrace risk and take chances and fail fast. And, the only way you learn is by making mistakes. And so that's not the only way, but it's certainly an important way that people learn. So yeah, I would say if you're young and you want to do it. Absolutely. It's not for everybody. And that's okay, but it's an amazing life for those that care about it and want to do it.
I think it was pretty interesting what you said a little bit ago, where you said, being an entrepreneur, it's a roller coaster, but kind of the joy and the excitement is the fact that you're taking the risk and you don't know if it's going to work, right? I mean, that's also tough, but at the same time too, that gives it, the thrill where you're trying your best, you're persevering, you don't know if it's going to happen, but if it does, it feels like a golden magical moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. So with that being said, Michael, thank you for joining Next Big Thing HQ. We appreciate it. I guess when does the Reg CF round end so that people watching can know they have that many days before the round closes that they can invest in Carbon Counts?
Yeah, that's a good question. So today actually is, we're recording this on January 15th. We haven't actually set an end date, although I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up ending it on February 15th. So I think we probably have about a month left. So that's not a lot of time left. And it's conceivable that we'd ended it at the end of this month, but we haven't decided that yet. So, we're hoping to close this seed round quickly. In total, from big investors and small investors, we're going to raise about $1 million more in this seed round. And then later on, we'll do a larger Series A. But this is really the last opportunity for people to get involved. So I would encourage anyone who thinks this is a cool idea to get involved and know that there's risk in doing so, but we're going to do our very best to build something that's special.
And there's also some investor incentives, if I'm not mistaken, right? You invest $100, you get 10 trees planted, right?
That's exactly right. We think that the whole mission of the game is to inspire climate action and plant trees. If you invest money, we're going to plant trees on your behalf.
Michael, we appreciate it. Best of luck with Carbon Counts. Thank you for coming on. And for all the viewers out there, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Next Big Thing HQ. Bye-bye.
Thanks a ton, Connor. Take care.